So, this article was linked to me over the weekend on LinkedIn. Of course, it was Saturday. I did not have a chance to really read and digest that article, but here it is Monday, and I feel like I've had sufficient opportunity to do so. So, the original article or the actual article that I saw was here on MSN. However, we can see that this is actually linked from the Register. So, what we're going to do is we're going to hop on over to the Register's article that came out on Friday the 15th. And let's talk about this because this seems to be ruffling some feathers, and my objective is to see if we can get to the bottom of whether this is really a problem or whether this is simply more fear mongering by the news. So it says that Microsoft's license shuffle means Power Apps users could break the bank. Now, I'm not going to read to the whole thing, but essentially there was a deleted blog post from an analyst on Directions on Microsoft that stated that some organizations building apps and Power Apps could have to switch from a Power Apps license to a Dynamics 365 license, and that obviously that would greatly increase costs. And their concern is around a section in the licensing guide for March 2024 called Verify License Compliance. And they assert that it makes some changes to the definitions of restricted tables, and that, of course, that could lead to increased costs. This is all, of course, related to Microsoft's new solution checker feature. So they talk about some restricted controls within there, and we'll get to that again in a second. And they give some sort of financial proof of concept. Uh, However, as of today, which is why I'm glad I've waited till today to really address this, it says a Microsoft spokesperson was in touch and said, "We're not introducing any changes or updates to our licensing requirements for Dynamics 365 or Power Up solutions. The Solutions Checker provides an improved and simplified way for customers to understand licensing requirements and optimize user licensing," which is true. "The Solutions Checker specifically addresses adherence to the most common Dynamics 365 sales license requirements when building Power Apps applications. These new capabilities, along with upcoming new tools and feature reports, first cover Dynamics 365 sales and will soon be extended to additional Dynamics 365 customer engagement workloads soon." And while I do tend to believe that, I mean, it is a source at Microsoft, and it's just packed full of marketing fluff. So hard to really make sense of what they're saying there. But they talk about this verify license compliance, which is found in the licensing guide. It links you to this site. And I think that the fuss is over this particular section about tables and operations that require license. Now, this I will read to you. It says the following table lists tables and the corresponding operations that require an appropriate Dynamics 365 license. When you run the solutions checker on your solution, it checks for the presence of restricted tables and operations and displays a message about the usage of restricted tables and operations. For more information about the required license, see the licensing guide. So I think this is already one frustration for a lot of end users, and this is a frustration of people I hear pretty commonly in the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform licensing spaces. Here it is, the Power Platform, or the Dynamics licensing guide is linked out here, and this is linking straight back to it. So you've already sort of created this circular reasoning, if you will. But I understand, as someone who's worked in the space a little bit, some of the concern here. So we can automatically see tables that do stand out to me, and it's the top two. It's lead and opportunity. So here's the question. I interpret this as saying tables and the corresponding operations that require an appropriate license. So I'm not believing that lead or opportunity have magically become restricted tables. However, I am inclined to believe that the operations listed just to the right of those tables are now restricted operations. So previously, uh, I didn't know anything about lead or opportunity being restricted, and we'll show you that in a second. But now it's saying that you couldn't use the qualified lead operation, or under opportunity, couldn't use win, lose, or calculate price. And this is made more frustrating because while this article that I'm showing you here was updated at the beginning of this year, the actual restricted tables requiring Dynamics 365 licenses was updated more than 20 months ago. So it's pretty old in terms of Dynamics 365. So there is a ton here, but what we want to focus on is simply this. So these are the actual list of restricted tables. And if you are using this table in any form or fashion, you need the appropriate license. as listed over here off to the right hand side. We know that this is old because it still mentions the customer engagement plan and Dynamics 365 plan. But it's pretty easy to see here, and we can control F or whatever you want to do to see that lead, yeah, no results. Opportunity, no results. So if you were looking strictly at this page, it would be very confusing for you. Or if you're building Power Apps in good faith, saying, hey, I don't see any restrictions to using the lead or opportunities table. Well, now coming back here, it looks like there are some. And then we're going to introduce this third article about Power Apps that talks about restricted tables, that simply says restricted tables are not standard tables within Dataverse, which lead and opportunity are standard tables within Dataverse, but are included in one of the customer engagement apps, such as sales, customer service, field service, marketing, or project service automation, which is, of course, now defunct, or a third party solution. For example, the knowledge, article, goal, and entitlement tables. So we know that those are restricted. We see goal there. We can go up here, we see entitlement. So this corresponds with this previous article, but doesn't necessarily jive with this newer article. So what does this mean? Well, in my opinion, you are somewhat limiting functionality. You haven't really drastically changed the Dynamics 365 landscape, but now you are starting to dabble in saying, hey, well, this table's not restricted per se, but this operation within the table, very much restricted. This is very interesting because it starts to get into the idea that a lot of end users get in their head about how much can I skirt licensing requirements, right? I see a lot of people wanting to do stuff as cheaply as possible or cutting corners wherever possible. And I certainly don't condone that. I think that's really in poor taste. I do condone people getting the right licenses for the right situation. But this does change that a little bit, right? If you were using a Power App and your Power App happened to use these operations within these tables that you, of course, never saw coming before because they weren't listed as restricted tables, now you may find yourself, if you use the solutions checker, finding that congratulations, these individuals now need a license. And this at scale could cause a problem if you had, 100 people using a Power App that had the qualify lead operation as part of that application. So at scale, yes, this could cause a problem. You would be going from some sort of Power Apps license to a Dynamics 365 license. However, it's not as incredibly doom and gloom or restrictive, I believe, as the news article makes it out to be. So while I think that using Solutions Checker is a net benefit, and while I believe that Microsoft, please, 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 desperately needs to update this uh, to bring it into the modern age, uh, I just don't know if this is much of a problem. Now, I'm not on the deployment side, so I don't do a lot of building and rollout of Power Apps, especially not outside of my just personal productivity and curiosity. So, for those of you who are writing and deploying Power Apps, what do you think? Is this a big deal? Are you writing apps that use this? Or if you had people dealing in lead and opportunities, were you already encouraging them to move towards a Dynamics 365 license? I'd love to hear from you all. So please drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and I will see you soon.